In October last year, I interviewed Stuart Byrne. Stuart is the chairperson of Dyslexia Gibraltar. And in our chats, we discovered lots of things about dyslexia, but what we realized was that we were just scratching the surface. So we have decided to embark on a 6-part documentary, really, talking about dyslexia. Stuart, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I thought that it would be good to try and see it from different points of view. So we're looking at parents, teachers, children, people in the workplace, just to have a bigger understanding of dyslexia.
So why don't you join us on our journey as we ask ourselves, why dyslexia? Hi, welcome to Why Dyslexia. This is a podcast series that we have decided to do just to explore a little bit, explore the world of dyslexia. I had a big chat with Stuart on one of my podcasts in October last year. Stuart Byrne, of course, who is with me today. And he is the chairperson of the Dyslexia Support Group. And we talked so much about it that he said, you know, we could have a series. And here we are with a series, 6 parts. We're going to be talking to parents, we're going to be talking to teachers and children and business people, people who have reached their goals. What we want to show you is that actually dyslexia is not a hindrance in any way. In fact, sometimes it's even a massive positive in your life. So we're going to be unpacking dyslexia. And today we are talking to the founder of the Dyslexia Support Group, which is now called Dyslexia Gibraltar, Marie Byrne. It's
Hello.
really nice to be here today
Hi.
in her house. And obviously Stuart, who's back for another episode.
And Stuart's my son.
And Stuart's your son, exactly.
Yes.
So I actually watched a program that you two were on years ago.
Yeah.
So you were very glam. Actually, I thought you looked great with your curly hair.
You.
And Stuart was like un niño.
True.
And you were talking about dyslexia.
Yeah,
And you were
that's
talking
right.
about what it was like being a mother of a dyslexic child and how difficult it was because there was nothing, absolutely nothing in Gib at the time. People probably didn't even know what dyslexia was.
No,
So-
they didn't know.
What I want to start from the beginning, Maria.
Yeah.
We want to find out, you know, how did you realize that Stuart was dyslexic or a bit different?
Okay, so I always think that God knew what he was doing when he gave me my dyslexic child, who was
Yes.
the 3rd child.
Right.
So I had 2 other children. I've always had a very educational stance and I always liked education a lot. So I did a lot of things with my children when they were very little.
Yes.
I did a lot of things that were educationally based, like I used to do the letters, the numbers and things like that, even when they were little.
And you'd had 2 previously.
I'd had 2
So he was your 3rd. So
he
of
was
course.
my 3rd. So I could compare and I knew at what stage he should be doing what.
Okay.
And very soon I discovered that he could count. He could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. But if I put 3 things on the table, even if I put 3 cups, for example, and they were the same cups, he had a lot of difficulty counting how many there were.
Right.
This was puzzling.
Odd. This was odd, not
This
for
was
you.
odd.
Yeah.
This was not something I had experienced with my other kids.
Of course.
And he was, even 3, he was going maybe 1, 2, 3, and yet he knew how to count. So that was something that was, this is odd. This is, something that I haven't come across. So that started a little thing in my mind. And then there were other pointers. For example, he would forget the names in the different seasons. For example, we use an umbrella in winter, but we don't use it in summer. So he would say, "Mum, can I have that thing that you hold when it's raining.
He couldn't, the words.
The word he couldn't
Yes.
remember.
How?
And slippers, for example.
Yeah.
The thing you put on your feet, but when it's winter,
Yeah.
and things like that. And again, I was very alert on
Yeah,
those things.
yeah.
So I started to think, he was very late in doing his laces, and things like that.
And how old was he when this started? Like quite young, do you think?
Yes, because I always started very young with them. So he was quite young when I was doing things with him. I did notice that he was clever and he was alert. So there was like a discrepancy there. And it was even more worrying for me. So what's going on? You know?
Yeah, and I suppose as a mother you do worry, no?
You do worry. And then we had, in those days, we're talking about, 40 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
How old are you, Stuart?
How old are you?
I'm 44.
44. Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe 38.
Yeah, it was
something
Years
like that.
ago, something like that. A long, a long time.
84, 85, 1985, something.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Mum? I think that it's important to highlight the word retrieval. That is something that's very common with dyslexic, and it still happens.
Which means what?
So that when you're speaking, you're trying to think of a word and you can't retrieve that word from your brain. It doesn't mean that you don't know the word.
Yeah.
You do know the word, it's just it doesn't come.
Right.
So for us, being Janito, it's quite useful sometimes because sometimes you can think of the word in Spanish.
Yeah.
But other times you may only know it in one of the languages. Like Mum was saying about the slippers, about the umbrella. It's quite common for dyslexics to say, pass me the thing over there, or get me the thing, and it's not that the person does not know the word. It's just that they can't retrieve that particular word at that particular point. And I think that another thing that also happens to my son who's dyslexic is understanding that the seasons and those changes can be problematic as well, because, we get used to the certain thing, we get used to wearing flip-flops.
Yes.
And a lot of dyslexics don't like change, and we get used to wearing flip-flops, and then it's not time to wear flip-flops anymore. My son carries on wearing flip-flops
Throughout the year.
And then he starts getting used to wearing shoes. Then summer comes because it takes him such a long time to change with the seasons.
Yeah.
So those are kind of little things that you can look out for, and hopefully understand
Yes.
the person with dyslexia. It's not that they're stupid because they can't think of that particular word that moment. They know the word. It's just they can't retrieve it.
Yeah.
It also happens is that when you retrieve the wrong word, you can be misunderstood.
Yeah.
So you may be trying to say, get me the jacket, but you can't remember jacket, so you say coat. And then someone brings you your coat instead of your jacket, and you're like, oh, not that one, I meant the other one.
Yes, and it's
but you said
frustrating.
coat.
Of course.
And I said, oh,
Yeah.
well, I know I said coat, but I couldn't remember. You meant the jacket. Yeah, I meant the jacket. So
Right.
those are kind of things that can be very frustrating for the person.
Yeah.
And for the person
Yeah.
you're speaking to and you're having relationships with.
Okay, Marie, so we'll go back to that. So
Yep.
so you realize with all these little things when he was young.
Yeah, I want to mention two other things, two other pointers, because
Yes,
parents can look out for
exactly,
those things.
exactly what we want to know.
And in my with Stuart, when we went out of the house and we were going somewhere where we went very often, say for example the park, he would start to walk in the other direction.
Oh,
Yeah.
what? Really?
Yeah, because they...
Even though you were all going one way.
No, in the sense that if I allowed him to,
He would
at
go-
that
he would
moment
go
I was
off.
speaking to someone,
Yes.
he would start to walk.
Yes.
And I would say, but Stuart, we're going to the park, which he knew, and, the other children of his age would have known that it was that way. So that also was
Yes.
another thing. And the other thing that I noticed as well was that we had a shop right underneath our house. And in those days, it's not like nowadays. We sent our children down to get this, get that. If I sent him for more than one item, invariably the guy would phone me. What did you want?
Yeah, it's still, I still struggle at times.
What would happen, Stuart? You would go down and you wouldn't remember, you couldn't process what your mother had asked you for.
Yeah, and it's something, it's those tricks that you learn. You know? So nowadays with modern technology, it's very useful. You have WhatsApp and stuff like that. But I struggle to remember things verbally. So if you tell me something verbally, it's harder for me to remember it. If I can visualize it, I find it easier to remember. So yeah, and I still struggle with that, and I have to be very careful. And I go to the shops and, I go to Morrison's and I'm doing shopping. And even with the lists, I still sometimes make mistakes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a big problem. The directionality thing that Mom was talking about, that is very common. Sequencing and directionality is it plays a part in lots of different things. So like we talked about, I think last time, about choosing a hand to write with. Mm. A lot of dyslexics find it very difficult to tell their right from their left. Mm. So a lot of dyslexics struggle to pass a driving test because the instructor says you turn left and they turn right.
Yes.
So all those kind of things. Now, I'm really good with directions now. I go a place once and I remember it all. But it is something that directions is very common, that people with dyslexia struggle with that.
Okay. And what was the other thing you were going to mention?
No, the other thing was the list thing. And one other thing that really struck me as being very odd was he would forget the names of people he knew really well. Like his cousin James, who he was always with, he would forget his name. And that was very unusual. Yeah.
So you at this point were quite worried, thinking what is going on?
Yes,
Nobody else in your family was dyslexic or had these learning?
Well, I didn't know anything about dyslexia. I didn't know such a thing existed. I didn't know anything about it. Mm. So I was just concerned. Mm. And I don't think I voiced my concerns even to my husband.
So what did you do?
Well, what did I do? When he went to school, in his first year...
St. Mary's.
In St. Mary's, my friend Mari Carmen Traverso, she was his teacher, and she had been Carla and Julian's, my other two children, she had been their teacher. And she said to me, Marie, Stuart is... I think Stuart is cleverer than the other two. And the other two were quite clever. So to me, I said,
Get out because he's got these strange...
But I was like, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, that was at the beginning. And then after about a term or two, she came to see me and she said, I'm very worried about Stuart. I said, why? She said, because he cannot... build up the letters. He is so weird, Marie, because he's so intelligent. He comes up with things, and yet when it comes to building up the words, he just cannot do it.
Yeah, I suppose.
So then I started to really worry.
Yes.
Then I really worried. But because Stuart had glasses, a lot of people said to me, maybe it's his eyes. Of course, at that time, nobody knew about dyslexia. Not even the teachers. But Carmen hadn't heard of it.
Yeah.
So all she was saying to me is, maybe it's his eyes. So I would take him to the...
the optician.
And they said, no, these glasses are okay. He should be reading fine. Yes. So it was all a very stressful time.
How did you work out what it was?
Yeah. I think I have a lot of faith, and I think God was involved in this. He could see how upset I was. And my husband, John, had problem with his back. So he went to England, and his sister lived there, and I went with him, and I went to his sister's house. And when we were there, she asked me how my kids were. I said, okay. And she said... well, I'm having problems with my middle child. And I said, what kind of problems? She said, well, she was doing very well at the beginning, but now she cannot read, she cannot spell.
Wow.
Yeah. And I
Same sort of thing as you were going through.
And then I started to think, wow. And she said, and she's being diagnosed with this thing called dyslexia. I said, what?
And that was the first
time I've ever heard. He must have been going on to 7.
Wow.
First
And
time.
somebody in England. It's not
In
like you
England.
heard from somebody here.
Yeah. Now, I went crazy because I said I want to know everything about it. The thing is, we compared and his symptoms were so similar. But whereas I had never, because maybe I got it very young, I had never sort of told him off or anything. She had punished her daughter a lot because she didn't know. She thought she was being lazy, she was being, which a lot of parents must do. You know, she wasn't working hard enough. So that was the beginning of my journey.
So you heard about this word dyslexia.
Yeah.
And you decided, right, that's it. I've got to get to the bottom of this and find out.
Yeah. I went to the Dyslexia Association in England.
In England?
I bought all the books. I asked if there was a course that I could do so that I could teach him.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was. It's called Alpha to Omega. Mm-hmm. So I bought all the material and I came back to Gibraltar and it wasn't
What happened? Because then the teachers, nobody knew about dyslexia.
No. And well, before that, I had not a very good incident was that the headmistress called me and said, we want you to come in. And with her husband, so we both came in, and the psychologist was there, the educational psychologist. And she said, the educational psychologist has seen Stuart, and he started to explain what was wrong with Stuart. But
nothing was wrong with me.
No, well, you know what I mean. And he started to explain.
Yeah, but I can see why they probably called him in.
But they didn't use the word dyslexia.
Yeah.
He started to, this was before I went to England.
Yes.
He started to explain about the brain and the lobe and the learning and I just was so upset and so anxious. And I just couldn't hear what he was saying. It was just scary.
Yes.
The educational psychologist telling me these things I didn't understand about my son, you know. And I just was very upset.
Worrying time.
Very worrying.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I went to see him and I said, "What's wrong with my son? Is that he's dyslexic?" And at that time,
what did they say? Did they know? Had they heard about?
He said that they didn't like to label children.
Right.
At that time, they didn't label them.
Right.
But for me, having the label was such a good thing.
Of course.
And I think for parents, it's so good to know this is
what's
what
wrong.
it's nothing scary.
Yeah.
Once you know, you read the books and it's nothing scary. You know, it's just he needs more help in certain things than other kids. That's all.
Yeah.
And once I knew that, it was like such a relief for me.
So you had all your books and you were learning about how you could help Stuart with his learning. How did your other two children deal with him?
Oh, they were fine with you.
Were they?
Yes, don't you think?
Yeah. I don't think there was an issue in that front. I think that when Mum started giving me lessons, so I would come home from school and she would give me lessons with the Alpha to Omega, which was really good.
Lessons as in what you'd been learning in school, she then adapted in another way?
No, we would sit down.
Were you actually learning in school?
She would actually go through like how to write make. Why isn't it ma-a-ke? Why, the magic E and all the rules and everything, how to learn to read, because you don't really learn that at school. So she was sitting down, I don't know, an hour every day or whatever.
After school. I must say he was the perfect student, eh? He never complained.
Is he your favourite child?
No, I don't have favourites.
And then into the summer, like we would go on summer holidays, and I would get up at 7 or 8 in the morning and do lessons with her during the summer. That was very difficult, and I think at times, obviously, I didn't want to do it. I often think that we should have a chat with my brother and sister and see how they felt. I was getting a lot of attention.
Yes,
but
more than them, maybe.
Yeah.
Probably.
But
they dealt with it well.
They dealt it with it very well.
I think that's
so. How do you go? How do you start changing people's minds in Gibraltar, especially the educational system? how do you, in those days, how do you start, telling people about dyslexia?
How did we do it?
How did you do it?
How did we do it? Well, when I got back, I wrote a letter, I think, to the Chronicle. I'm not sure. My memory is a bit hazy. But lots of people started to identify with what I was saying. One of them, who was very instrumental as well, was Fiona Culato.
Yes.
Because her daughter was also dyslexic. So she was also with me.
Louise.
And another person was Douglas Cumming, who has passed away now. But he had a child as well, Wesley, who was also dyslexic. So, and people started to come from everywhere. So that's when we decided, well, we have to become...
Form like a support group, which is what you did. How do you start that?
Well, how did we start it? We just got, I don't remember.
You got a group of people together and said, right, that's it.
Together.
And I suppose you have to register as a charity and all the rest.
All of that kind of legally thing like that. Douglas was very good at that. He was like the treasurer, I think.
Okay.
So he was the one, because I'm dreadful at that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that when I went to England again with Stuart, I contacted an educational psychologist there, who tested him, and we then brought over to Gibraltar
to test other people, because I also saw a video where they're giving a talk other people.
Well,
from
that
the educational
was
system in England.
Our biggest success.
Yeah,
we brought over Sue Briggs, who was
Sue Briggs. That's it. I saw that. Yeah,
she was a specialist teacher in dyslexia, and she was teaching the teachers, and I must say the response from the teachers was tremendous, really good.
That's positive to hear.
Jib, yeah,
because it could have gone the other way a little bit.
Yeah. No.
You never know. But it was welcomed.
Themselves.
I mean, it was welcomed. The educational system in Jib welcomed this.
Yes, but
that's good, because of course they helped.
I didn't have to bring the teachers in. They came in, and actually it was done in a weekend. So they gave up their weekend. So that was
listen
tremendous.
to Sue talking.
Yeah, I wanted to actually do the course myself with her. I attended it, but because I wasn't a registered teacher, I couldn't get the certificate. But I attended the course, so I knew everything on it.
So when you started the support group, what were your goals? What was your main aim?
Our aim was to help. Our main was to help the children. Yeah. That was our aim. Yeah. How can we help these children? More than we weren't so geared on the parents or anything. We were geared. We don't want our children to have to suffer. Yeah. We want these children to be helped. What is the best way that we can go about doing this? And
what were the biggest changes that happened?
The biggest change that happened, I think, was one, the what's the word? The fact that, what's the word that when you make it known to everybody now?
Awareness.
Awareness. People started to know there was a thing such as dyslexia, and what it meant. We did a lot of going out
fundraising,
fundraising, a lot of that, and also appearing on television when I appeared with Stuart.
Yes,
all these things.
Well, I thought that was pretty good actually, because that was a long time ago. Yet it was very easily understood. The way you both came across, even you, Stuart, little boy, but I mean, it was you were very clear about what it was, and I'm sure the people watching were probably really reassured, because you imagine what you went through, not having a clue what was going on. They were telling you your son is intelligent, but there's some sort of block there. That,
if you imagine, the teacher doesn't know.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
so then dyslexia
really worrying.
The word dyslexia and the fact that it was, something tangible that you can work with, and that it's not the end of the world if your child has it or if you have it. So that you were the person who really got that out there. You and your group.
Yes, our group.
Yes. Yeah. And how did you go from strength to strength to what it is now?
To what it is now.
I think
sending over, bringing over, we brought him over periodically, the psychologist, who then would diagnose people. And then we always advise the parents, go into the school and tell the teacher that he has been diagnosed, because unfortunately the educational psychologist here would not diagnose. So at the time.
Yeah.
So that was a very big step. And the other very big step, I think, and I think everybody would agree, is that the teachers were trained, so then they went back to the classroom, they could pick out the child more easily.
Yeah.
They all said how much it helped them. Then they would say, oh, maybe that child, you know. So there was much more awareness where it was needed in the education, in the schools.
Yes.
And the other thing that was wonderful is that some of those teachers would then give private lessons to children who had difficulties. So it was brilliant. It was, for me, it really opened, a very successful
apart from
thing.
helping kids, you open people's minds as well to it, which I think is half the battle.
Yeah.
And recognizing, like you say, what a difference it made to you, having a label, knowing. Whereas here, the attitude was, let's not label.
Yeah.
Actually.
I think that's an important point from the educational psychologist's point of view. A label is not necessary, and I've always said it. And when I started the Dyslexia Support Group going again, because it was dormant when I started it, it was funny because I went to Douglas to get the bank account and all the stuff. My mum said he had all the paperwork, and you know, Freddie, who was the education psychologist, I would tell him, look, if you're telling me that the children are going to get the help they need, they don't need a label. Of course, they don't need a label. But the problem is, even with the label, they still, a lot of the times, don't get the support that they need. So the label is useful. And also, if you ask any dyslexic if having that label has helped them, I think 99.9% will say yes.
Yes.
And I think, I don't like to use this because it's not a disease, you know, and it's not an illness, and it's not something that goes away. It's just the way that our brains work. But it is similar to if you are struggling with something and you don't know what it is, physical illness or something, and then you get a name for it, and it makes a massive big difference. And for parents and for children, I think having that label is very useful. I find it useful when people look over my shoulder and see my spelling. I say I'm dyslexic, or you know, I struggle to remember something. You know, I can say I'm dyslexic. Not everybody understands that, but at least it helps me feel okay, and it helps me feel that, you know, this is not my fault. You know, when I can't do my times table, or you know, I can't spell a word that I should spell at my age.
Well, that's what your mom was saying before about your cousin in England, whose own mother used to get cross with her for, you know, some behavior that really wasn't her fault, that it was just the way her brain was wired, and that was it. And until the mother realized that, look, she had dyslexia, and then probably she felt really bad.
Yes, she did.
Of course.
And I'm sure a lot of parents, you know, and that was one thing that we also wanted to avoid.
Yes.
The one thing, because you wanted to ask me what, I don't know how we're doing.
No, we're doing fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so you ask me then whatever you want. But
what
I wanted to say that although Stuart needed help with spelling and with reading, I think as parents it's important that we treat him just like any other child in the house. And we don't make allowances in other areas, because the areas, not all children, dyslexic children, are going to have the same symptoms, if you want. Like Stuart, it was mainly his spelling and his reading. So there he needed help. We gave him the help that we could give him. But that was not an excuse for bad behavior.
Yeah.
That was not an excuse for him being lazy. That was not, you know what I mean? We never made any allowances for that. He was the same as the others. He had the same responsibilities his other brother and sister had to do, although sometimes he didn't want to, but he had the same responsibility, yes? So I want to say that, because today people can think, okay, so my child has to be cosseted. No way. He's going to grow up. And to be honest, my greatest success is my son. That's my greatest success.
Thank you.
It's true. He's done so well for himself. I'm so proud of him. So if we can do that, we can bring up our children.
Yes.
If
Well,
that
he's had the same. He's got his son who's dyslexic, you know, and he's learnt from you.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I suppose.
I like
Stuart?
I like to say two things on that. That one is that I've always said this, and I thank Mum and Dad for this. When a report card would come home, they wouldn't look at my attainment. They would look at my effort. If my effort was A or the top grade or high, it didn't matter if my attainment was low.
And were your teachers seeing your effort?
I assume because they would give me high, you know.
So you'd get a high grade for your effort?
Yes, my effort was
rather
always
than the
high.
attainment.
Yeah, my effort was always high. So I could get an A for effort, and I could get a C or a D for attainment.
Yes.
But Mum and Dad would always, praise me for when I was putting my effort. If I wasn't putting the effort, then they would scold me.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't attaining, that wasn't what they would look at.
Any other parent with any other...
But also, and this is something that Mum has basically said, and what I always say to parents, look, the education system is what it is. For dyslexics, most of the time, it's the worst time of their life. But a lot of them grow up and go back.
Yeah.
They do degrees later on in life.
Yeah.
And so what I tell parents is, it's our job as parents. Yes, firstly, the educating our children is our job. So don't just farm it out to the school. The school has a responsibility whilst your child is there, but it's still your responsibility as a parent. So make sure the school is doing the job. But as our job as parents is to bring up people and bring up our children to be, have integrity, to be kind, to be generous, to be helpful, to work hard. If you instill those kind of things, no matter what they do, they'll succeed. Even if they haven't got any qualifications. And if they are good people, later on in life, if they find their niche, they'll go back to study, or they'll be an entrepreneur like Richard Branson and people like that. So what I tell parents is, yes, of course, it's important, the education system, and their education is important. But it's more important that you bring up children who have good self-esteem, who are trustworthy, and the morals, those kind of things. Because those kind of things will hold them in good stead no matter what they do.
Regardless of everything.
Yeah.
So one thing I just want to know, who helped you along the way when you started the dyslexia support group in Gib? Did you have people helping you along the way? Yes, and for encouraging you. Everybody, not I don't mean financial help. What I mean is who kind of helped you get this off the ground.
I didn't
and
need
moving.
anybody.
I can see that.
Yeah, because when I get to be in my bonnet,
yes,
but. I had Fiona Culato.
Yes.
She was very much involved.
With you. Yeah.
And there's somebody else that I was thinking today about, Belinda Traverso as well. She was another person. And Douglas.
Yes.
Yeah. My memory is not all that
as well?
good.
Was Gonchi Clancy?
No, I can't
She was
remember.
later, no?
Yeah, maybe, but my memory is not all
Marie,
that
do you
good.
feel you achieved your goals in the time that you were involved in the support group? I suppose you still are to a certain extent, but
no, I'm not.
You're not anymore?
Really, no, not really. Achieved our goals. I think we achieved a lot.
yeah,
I didn't have goals as such.
Yeah.
They were very hazy. All we wanted to do was to help.
and to raise awareness.
To raise awareness. Bring in the psychologist was a good step.
Yeah.
Sue Briggs was a marvelous step. So those things, and also there was, we sent, Stuart and Wesley went on, was it a weekend or something?
It was 2
To
weeks in
England.
summer.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, is this, that Stuart did not continue in Bayside because we found he was struggling too much. Because Stuart's was his discrepancy between his intelligence and his reading and writing was very big. In fact, the psychologist said he was the the one with the biggest discrepancy. So that meant that he was really struggling. And, he would come with a list of spellings and I felt like throwing them in the bin because he didn't know how to spell the most basic spelling. So
what did you do with him?
Well, I found out what are the most common spellings for this age, and I taught him those. Why am I going to teach him which, W-I-T-C-H, when he didn't know how to spell W-H-I-C-H? No? For example.
So you left Bayside, or did you stay in?
I went to Bayside for the first couple of years, and before my GCSEs, I ended up going to sort of Grande International School.
Interesting. Why was that?
Because he was not getting anywhere in Bayside. He was not getting the help he needed. I struggled a lot with the teachers. I went there a lot and I cried and everything. But it was very frustrating.
And the Sotorande school sorted you out, helped you more?
Yeah, they had a teacher who was trained to teach dyslexia. Obviously, being a private school as well, it meant that the classes were smaller and that I could go out and spend time with this specific teacher and have one-on-one. I think that's another issue that's very difficult. You want your child to get the best teaching they can get. And, dyslexics need to be taught in a certain way. Yeah. So you can't just give your dyslexic child extra lessons after school and they're just teaching the same way as in school. You need to make sure they're getting taught the correct way. Yeah. And what happens is, like I said before, just school is very draining. It's very demoralizing. It can be, very emotionally draining. So when you come home, the last thing you want to do is be reading, writing, and spelling. So when you come home, you're shattered, and then you have to do lessons on something which you're not going to get. They're going to teach you the same way as they've taught you at school, and so it's really important that if you do get extra lessons, and as I always tell parents, talk to the teacher and find out if they know what they're doing when it comes to dyslexia,
and choose a teacher who knows.
The reason I was saying that is because obviously having that at school during my school hours, being able to come out of classes in my school hours meant when I finished school, I was finished for the day. Work.
And what's the situation like in school now? Do you know?
It's a lot better. Since we got the government, the Chief Minister signed the Med by Dyslexia pledge, things have been better. Yeah. But there is still problems. And, I know a lot of parents who've taken their kids out of, the schools and put them in Prior Park or put them in Loreto. Yeah. And yes, sometimes it's not just about the teachers knowing what they're doing and stuff like that. Sometimes it's like smaller classes, being able to have that helps, one-on-one help.
I mean, would you say that private schools are better equipped for children who are dyslexic, or not necessarily?
Well, not necessarily.
Right.
Because a lot of private schools only want the best.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they will only. I actually have someone who's been in contact with us, who has been telling us that they haven't been able to find a private school to put their dyslexic child in because they won't accept him.
Gosh.
So that private schools, that they have that thing, they want to have the best of the best. So their figures look good at the end of the year.
I mean, yes.
So you gotta take that into account. But of my experience, and I haven't put my kids in prior, but. Of what I hear from other people, they seem to be very good. Loreto used to be good as well. But I think at the moment, what I hear is that Prior is doing very well when it comes to dyslexia. But that doesn't mean that if my children have both gone to the normal government schools and they've got
done
through.
All right. They've got
Sean's still learning.
Still,
Sean hasn't finished, but my daughter's in university.
Exactly.
And there's many kids who get through the system. There's a lot of kids who get to uni and find out they're dyslexic in uni.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's yes, if you have the money, it's, it is a lot of money,
yeah.
and you can afford it, and, your child is really struggling, then it could be beneficial.
But you have to make sure that school will know what they're doing with the dyslexic child.
Yeah. I just want to ask one thing. The support group now is called Dyslexia Gibraltar, so the name changed. Have the goals the things that your mother was trying to do all those years ago, how far have you come since you've taken it over, Stuart?
So I think what
are the main?
So our name officially is still the Gibraltar Dyslexia Support Group. We just shortened it because it's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah.
Just for propaganda and awareness things. But our constitution is nearly exactly the same. I don't think we've basically changed it since Mum's days, because I got the constitution they had, and we've stayed the same. So look, our goal is the same. It's just build awareness and support. If it's building awareness to the education department, to schools, to the general public, and bringing support to kids, to parents, to the education department, to workplaces, and everything we can. During that, I always say, if I felt that, we had really done our goal, I would close up the Dyslexia Support Group today.
Yeah.
There's a need.
Of course.
That's why we're here.
Of course.
Hopefully, soon there won't be a need, or there'll be very little need. But also there has been some good steps, like in Mum's day. There has been some good steps in our day. We have a very good relationship with the education department.
Yeah.
There's signed the Made by Dyslexia pledge. We're still working with them.
The Dyslexia pledge?
Yeah, the Made by Dyslexia pledge. So the Chief Minister signed that in 2018, I think it was. And basically the main three things of that was that to recognize dyslexia as a positive, to educate teachers and people and basically build awareness. And third was to screen children. So the education department has already started that screening system.
Yeah.
So, obviously there's lots of schools, so I'm not sure if they've done it in all the schools, but basically I can't remember if it's year 6 or 7 or 8. From now on, they will all be screened with an online tool. So the likelihood of someone getting through the education system without being recognized shouldn't ever happen again. That's one.
I mean, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, the thing is that we've got to make sure that the education department carry on doing it.
Yes.
It's easy to pledge to do something, and you have to keep it up, and you have to, and the training, the online training, it's Made by Dyslexia with Microsoft. It's free. I tell everybody to do it. I send it to everybody.
I looked at it.
It's mainly for teachers, but if you want to find out about dyslexia, you can do it.
Yeah.
So those are the three main things from the pledge. And, if we can get, the Chief Minister signed this. So if we can get all of the civil service, which I think is like 6,000 people, to recognize dyslexia, to do that online training, and the screening, we'll bring the awareness of dyslexia up, really, really well.
Yeah. But I think you've done incredibly well, both of you.
Thank you.
Really, on behalf of everybody, I'm going to thank you because, I think you're very inspired by your mum. She is pretty inspirational. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
What advice would you give other parents, other teachers, other who are discovering that their children are dyslexic, or even if they are grown up and they've got through everything and they realize that they're dyslexic?
Yeah. Well, if it's different, not for a child and a mother and a grown up. If you think that your child might be dyslexic, I think it would be a good idea to phone up or get in touch with the Dyslexia Gibraltar, with the Dyslexia Gibraltar, and talk to people there.
Yeah, people who know.
Yeah, and they could say, well, the next step that you can take is this or that.
Yeah.
Then I think nowadays, with so much literature on the web, go and read up and see, has my child got these symptoms? Parents are so good at picking up things because we know our children.
Instinctively.
Yeah, and teachers don't listen. Some of the teachers used to say to me, well, some do listen. I'm not saying they don't. But if you are excitable, which I am an excitable person, so I take things very emotional, they say, oh, you're just taking it out of context, or, you're being hysterical, or, and it's because it's your child. Of course you get excited, So I think it's very important that you become a member of that group and you get as much support as you can from other teachers. Find out if there is somebody who knows how to teach dyslexic children. If there is, and you have the money, get them those lessons. It's important for their morale as well. At least in those lessons they can succeed, because a child in school will find, if he's quite dyslexic, that he cannot succeed. At least he says, well, I'm succeeding here. The teacher's happy with me, and that's going to be a lot. The other thing, as I said before, don't treat your child differently. Find out where he needs help, give him that help. Otherwise, he's just another member of the household, and he needs to be taught as the others do, about manners, about what is right, what is wrong, and everything else. And as Stuart said, those are the important things. So always keep that in perspective. It's not about education. It's about building up a child. I mean, I'm super proud of Stuart, and everything that he's achieved as a person.
I want to add to that, Mum. I think that's all perfect, and I think that it's important to realize how demoralizing school can be at times. Even for non-dyslexics, it can be very difficult. And I always tell parents, find what your child excels in. If it's art, if it's drama, if it's sport, dyslexics normally are good at something. You just find what they're good at. Let them excel in that. Let them be good in that. Because like Mum was saying, every person needs to have their self-esteem built up. And if you can do well in a sport, that will build you up. Even if you do badly at school, at least you're good at sport. If you're good at art, you need something. I was good at art, so it always helped me. And I think find what your child is good at, encourage it, and help them succeed in that. And like Mum said, in her day, you didn't have the internet. Now we have the internet.
You have everything on your
You have everything. I say to everybody, go to our YouTube channel, Dyslexia Gibraltar. There's loads of videos. If that's the way you learn, that's the way I learn. Watch YouTube videos on our YouTube channel. There's loads of great stuff if you watch all our videos, you'll be an expert. You'll probably know more than the teacher that you're going to talk to. And then, obviously you can, if you are someone who reads, there's lots of other resources that you can read. Get in touch with us, we'll send you resources. But there's so much there. There's no excuse not to know about it.
Well, thank you. Do you want to say anything else?
I just wanted to say one little thing that I remembered. Because, what Stuart says is very, very, very important as well. But we read that a dyslexic child, it would be very helpful for them to have a pet. So we got him a dog, a Cocker Spaniel, remember? And it was a bit of a success in one way, but not in another, because it was Stuart's dog. So he was the one.
He had to look after it.
He had to take him out.
Did he?
Reluctantly.
That's like lots of children with their pets, all kinds of
Reluctantly.
Fish and all sorts.
But, I just want to
say thank you so much for inviting me to your home and for sharing, both of you. It's really lovely to see you both talking about something that you're so passionate about, both of you. So
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michelle, for having us.
Another episode of Why Dyslexia. We've got a few more to go. I hope you're enjoying them. And yes, I'm sure you're going to learn something. I certainly am. Thank you very much for watching.
1 in 5 people are dyslexic. Do you think you might be dyslexic? Please get in touch with us at Dyslexia Gibraltar and scan the QR code to follow us on all our social media platforms. Please watch, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel Dyslexia Gibraltar.